Hello everybody and welcome back to Nerdly Out Loud, the official channel of nerdly.co.uk, your favourite British website for all of your news, reviews and exclusive interviews. I like to cover everything from the big budget to the low budget to the no budget, but as you can see by my gorgeous, sexy background, we are going to be talking about Cobra Kai. More specifically, we will be talking about the last 5 episodes of Cobra Kai. This show has finally wrapped 7 years, 6 seasons. Kreese is back, Terry Silver came back, Bad Boy Mike Barnes came back, Johnny Lawrence and Ralph Macchio, or Daniel LaRusso, sorry, made friends at some point, fell out a couple of times, made friends again, thrown each other through windows, and it's just been a bloody good time. It's been a wholesome, awesome good time. Now, when I think back to 7 years ago and John Horowitz and Josh Held turned on and said that they were going to be bringing us a Cobra Kai series, only this time we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to tell that story. There was fan theories abound all those years, fan theories everywhere, that actually Johnny was the real hero, Daniel was the villain. That's what it's going to be. We're going to be telling Johnny Lawrence's story and dealing with Johnny's kind of comeback into the fold. Of course, as a fan, I was dubious. Yes, I was. I wasn't sure how this was going to go. But one thing was said and one thing was made clear, and it kind of gave me a little bit of hope. We weren't going for the big companies. We weren't going to Paramount. We weren't going to Warner Bros. We weren't going to Netflix, Prime, all these different amazing streaming services. We were going onto YouTube Red. It sounded like the sort of place you would go and find porn, to be honest. However, Cobra Kai was going to go on YouTube Red, and that to me said that they were going to be able to do whatever the hell they wanted with this thing. So yes, they were going to stay true to the original Karate Kid and everything like that, but they were going to get to play in a much bigger sandbox because they weren't going to be constrained by some of those things that you might be constrained by. First ever episode, I think it was like Ace Degenerate or something like that. We meet Johnny Lawrence. He's down and out. He's had a shit time since getting kicked in the face illegally, by the way, by Daniel LaRusso and losing the All Valley. He was 2-time champion. He was a shoo-in and he lost to this new kid in town. And since then, nothing's really gone right. I will say, not completely Daniel LaRusso's fault. And when we meet him, he's so far down and out, but it's kind of like the one thing he still might have is Cobra Kai. And he's living in this little apartment. Miguel comes to town with his mum Carmen and they kind of move across the way from him, and Miguel's just this little nerdy kid who just keeps getting his ass kicked by the local bullies, and Johnny Lawrence is like, I'm going to teach him how to defend himself. I'm going to teach him karate. I'm going to teach him the ways of Cobra Kai. And thus, Cobra Kai is back. It's back in the valley. Johnny Lawrence is going to be back. He's got his first student, Miguel, and Miguel is going to teach him how to sort of bring himself into this century rather than living all those way back. And that was one of the fun things we got. Like, he didn't really understand the internet or emails or anything like that. Yes, they played on it a little bit too much, but Johnny was very much a guy who's stuck in the 80s. He wasn't in this era, and Miguel was going to bring him kicking and screaming. But then, of course, in the town, we also have Daniel LaRusso, who's now an auto car trade salesman. He's selling cars. He's loving life and kind of living by the teachings of Mr. Miyagi. He's not really in that way anymore. However, things are stirred up when he sees Cobra Kai is back in town. And that becomes the crux of the series. These two guys who used to be mortal enemies, having not really known about each other for a long time, now kind of thrust into the thing because Johnny just wants to do his thing, get back to being awesome like he used to be when he was in Cobra Kai, and Daniel really doesn't want that because it stirs up a lot of mixed emotions from back in the day when he first came at the Valley. He's going to do everything he can to mess up Lawrence's gig, but Lawrence, he just wants to get on with his life. And that was season 1. We kind of meet all the characters in season 1. We meet Miguel, who's going to be our de facto kind of Daniel / Johnny. We're also going to meet Johnny Lawrence's son, who he's not really had much to do with for a long time. Robby, we meet him. We meet Daniel LaRusso's daughter, Samantha. We meet her. We meet Daniel's new wife, who is not Ali, by the way, but we still love her to pieces. We do still love her. And we'll just meet characters as we go through, and we grew to love these characters, whether they were in Miyagi-Do or Cobra Kai. as a fan, we loved them. And what you would normally find is it didn't really matter because they would traverse between dojos anyway at some point, which was awesome. And those first couple of seasons that were on YouTube, they, for me, were the absolute pinnacle. Season 1 is one of the most perfect seasons I've seen in a TV show in a long time. It hit every nostalgia bone I wanted it to. It got the story across really well. We got to meet all these characters that were fleshed out superbly, and they brought back a legacy character here, there, and everywhere when it was needed. Never forced upon us, just when it was needed. It got really popular, people were loving it, and Netflix were like, you know what, let's get this little thing that's over on YouTube Red, let's bring it over to Netflix, make it our own. And I have to say, Series 3 and maybe Series 4 was a little bit of a decline for me. I didn't really vibe on it all that much. Although we were getting the legacy characters of Chosen coming back. Chosen from Karate Kid 2. We got to meet him again, which was awesome. Kreese came back and kind of like messed up Johnny's head a little bit. And then Terry Silver came back and messed up everybody's head a little bit. Bad Boy Mike Barnes came back and messed up everybody's head a little bit. Ali came back to kind of let everybody know that, you know what, Johnny's a good guy, but so's Daniel, and you guys really have a lot in common, and that lasted all of 2 minutes. And then Season 6 came along, and I'm going to talk about Season 6 a little bit more, but more specifically, I'll talk about the last 5 episodes. But they did a lot in that first half of the season with the Saikai Taikai and the run-up to that to really kind of get me back on board as a fan, to really bring me back into knowing that this is the Cobra Kai I used to know and I used to love. And we're going to really propel ourselves to the final, because I think they knew it was coming to an end, so they really got their stuff together. And whereas like we'd had these little stories that had kind of just kept us going for a little while, we now had an end game. We had to get to the Saikai Taikai, we had to figure out what Cobra Kai was, who Johnny was, and who Daniel was. And I am going to spend a little bit of time on the last 5 episodes, more so than anything else, because the last 5 episodes were absolutely superb in my eyes. Now, episode 1 and 2 of the last 5 weren't as amazing as the rest. Obviously, when we finished part 1 and 2 of season 6, Kwon died in the middle of the mat at the Saikai Taikai. He was basically murdered by Axel, sent out there by Kreese to do the job. When we come back to the first 2 episodes, is Daniel just doesn't want to do it anymore. He's really lost it all. Like, Miyagi might not be the guy that he thought Miyagi was, and that's really messed him up quite a bit. They lost a young kid on the mat. Wasn't one of his kids, but it was a young kid on the mat. Of course that's going to mess Daniel up. Johnny is sort of just coasting by. He's a little bit unsure what's going on. Carmen's about ready to give birth, so he's kind of dealing with all that. He's also now working back at the dealership, so yeah, Johnny's in a weird headspace, but you can tell from the word go that he wants this to come back. And then you move over to the other side and you've got Kim Da-yoon and Kreese, who are really dealing with the death of Kwon and really trying to like get over that and figure out who and where they are. But Master Kim is just sort of like, it doesn't matter what happened, he was just a student. Master Kim, by the way, played by Vinny Masuka, C.S. Lee from the old Dexter fame. Kreese has a little bit of a crisis of conscience, and his redemption arc is starting here. Now, I see a lot of people, and I'll address this in a little bit, I see a lot of people talking about Kreese's redemption arc. I personally think Kreese is beyond redemption. I don't think we can ever get there, because even though he might want to be the nicest guy on the planet, it doesn't matter. It's gone too far. While we as fans can see that redemption arc and can adjust to the new Kreese, it's just not going to happen within the show. So the redemption arc, let's not go too far on that one. Kim Da-yoon kind of just wants Kreese out now. She wants the dojo, and Master Kim gives her a choice, shows her the way into doing this, and then she straight up murders Master Kim. And then, of course, we have Terry Silver, who really wants to get the Saikai Taikai back on track, because we find out that he is dying. He's not well. It was kind of hinted at a little while back, but they never really nailed that down for us. And in this series, the first 2 episodes, they nail that down for us. We get this really cool scene where Johnny kind of says to Daniel, "Do you trust me? Because there's something coming down the pipe." And then he sits down with Daniel on one side of the table, and on the other side of the table we've got Terry Silver. And Terry Silver's like, "We need to put this back on for the kids, we need to put this back on for us, but I also need us to put it back on for me, because I am dying and this is my last chance. And there's a really, really cool moment. You know how in Karate Kid 3, when he convinces Daniel to join him and help him, and then he walks away and he's got that little smirk on his face because he knows Daniel's going to do it. He knows he's won him over. He kind of does that again. Little less confident than last time though. So that's nice, but that's what this show does really nicely. It does a lot of callbacks, a lot of full circle moments. And then you've got Chosen, who's really kind of going through the runner because obviously his ex from Karate Kid 2 is not really all that interested in him anymore, so he's a little bit huffed at that, but he still kind of fancies Kim Da-yoon a little bit. He ends up getting a little bit of a date with Elizabeth Berkley. That's right. Saved by the Bell fame's Elizabeth Berkley. Jesse Spano is in these episodes. Well, one episode. And I didn't really understand what was going on here because she comes in as like this tarot reading hippie. And then there's this moment where she talks about like one of the cards shows death. And this is one of my points of contention with the series because the card shows death and she says it means somebody close to you is going to die. And he's like, well, maybe it's like the metaphorical death of the old me turning into the new me. And she's like, well, I'm not sure it is about that. And he's like, no, I'll just take it as that. We kind of have to take it as that because nobody close to Chosen does die in this series. So let's get into the last 3 episodes because that is where the crux of all this is. It's where it's leading to, and I absolutely frigging loved every moment of these 3 episodes. So the Saikai Taikai is back on, which means Samantha and Tori are going to have to throw down so that one of them can face off against the Iron Dragon champion, Zara, and then also on the other side of the card, Tana Buchanan or Robby has to take on Axel. So before we even get there, a crisis of conscience from Tori. She doesn't want to do it. She's had enough. Obviously, we know the story about her mum having died, so that really propelled her into wanting to kick some serious ass. But after Kwon dies, she's kind of just lost interest. Kreese has really kind of done a number on her, so this time she's going to sit this one out. She doesn't want to do it, which means Samantha's just going to go straight through to the final and take on Zara. But before she gets there, Samantha's kind of like goes to see Tori and she's like, will you train with me? Who better than you to help me train for the final against this girl? And again, Tori's sort of like not really that fussed about that. She gets a little visit from Kreese, and Kreese is kind of like wants her to do well, and he just wants to bury the hatchet and make sure that she knows everything he did was for her. It was for Cobra Kai. She was always his star pupil. Remember, Johnny's star pupil is Miguel, Daniel's is Samantha and Robby, Kreese's was always Tori. So he kind of like goes to her and gives her this little speech and does a thing, and it's a really, really, really nice moment. And what I will say is that Peyton List is the MVP of this show from the moment she came into it. She has been one of the best characters, one of the strongest characters, and in season 6, with all that stuff about the story about her mum, and then going into the finale, she is the absolute MVP of this show. Peyton List, I cannot say enough about that girl. Yes, I remember seeing her in Disney's Jessie and Bunked, but now we have a fully grown Peyton List who is just going to go on to do amazing things with her career from now on. And she's the MVP of Cobra Kai for me personally. And they have this really nice moment where Kreese just kind of is trying to say sorry and she's just sort of not having it. But then she sort of like does a little bit of a U-turn and she's like, what if you were in my corner if I did the tournament? And he's kind of like, you don't want that. Nothing but bad comes from me being around anyone. That leads us to one of Daniel's big moments of the series, and a moment that I see a lot of fans kind of having a little bit of contention with, but honestly, I had no issues with it. It's a bit janky, we'll talk about it. It's a bit janky, but I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it at all, and that is the episode Skeletons. And in this episode, Daniel's kind of looking to the skies and he's looking to Miyagi for a little bit of guidance, because does he really want his kid going through this tournament? Does he really want these kids going through this tournament? Can he trust Terry Silver? Can he even trust Johnny Lawrence at this point? Like, what is going on in his head? He's not sure. So he's looking to Miyagi for guidance. And then all of a sudden, remember those skeleton outfits that the Cobra Kai guys wore in the movie? A load of guys start coming over his fence into his garden with those outfits on. Kind of like a daytime nightmare that he's having. And out of the mist comes this silhouette, this little shadow of a little man. And it's Pat Morita. It's Mr. Miyagi. He's back in Series 6. And what a moment this was. The two of them kind of go back to back with each other, and they're using the Miyagi-Do style that Mr. Miyagi taught him, and taking down all the skeletons, each getting good little moments. Mr. Miyagi turns round to Daniel and basically gives him some act right. Sometimes when you don't fight, that's when you win. It's like that white man can't jump moment with Rosie Perez, when she's like, sometimes when you lose, you actually win. Sometimes when you win, you actually lose. And sometimes when you win or lose, it's actually a tie. It never made sense in that movie. It'll never ever make sense. But in the context of Cobra Kai right now, it does make a little bit of sense coming from Mr. Miyagi. Now, there is a little bit of AI used here, a little bit of, like, whatever you want to call it, mocap. I would have preferred mocap. This did feel like AI, and it doesn't entirely work. It is a little bit janky, but I didn't mind it because they kind of make it dark at night and they make the shadows across the face. They make it a little bit ambiguous. Daniel, the next morning when he goes to breakfast and Samantha tells him that she's now decided she's stepping down from the tournament, she doesn't want to fight, then that's really cool because Daniel is completely okay with it, and that's a fantastic moment. I love that moment. But it now means Tori will have to take on Zara, and it means Robby is taken on Axel. And we start with Robby versus Axel. The first round doesn't go too well. He's kind of just getting his ass handed to him, but like for every 1 point he gets, Axel gets 2, and then he goes to the side and they have a little bit of a chat. You are Robby Keene, you are this guy, you are that guy. He goes back for round 2. He starts getting the points in really quickly, and then all of a sudden Axel decides to just completely change his stance, change his style, change everything, because he's a freaking machine. But Robby's able to withstand it and get through to the end of the round. We come into the third round, and during the break, Terry Silver and Sensei Wolf, Louis Tan, by the way, we'll talk about Louis Tan in a minute, Sensei Wolf and Terry Silver kind of decide that, you know what, the best way to get him out of this match and the best way to win this match is take him completely out. So he literally goes in for a move and breaks Robby's leg, and it looks harsh. That's him out of the game. They do that thing in the locker room where Daniel looks at Chosen and he's like, do this, you know, and Chosen's kind of like, it's not magic, it's a broken leg, it needs time to heal. So that means Axel is just kind of going to have to be the winner. So we now focus on Tori versus Zara, and this is going to be one of the absolute highlights of the last episodes for me. Terry Silver again in Zara's ear, Sensei Wolf again in Zara's ear. It's kind of like, you're in this girl's head, you know you can beat her, she's got nothing on you. So when Zara gets on the mat, she really plays on that, and she sort of mentions the fact that there's all the people in the audience who have got Zara signs. They all want Zara to win. Robby wants Zara to win. And Tori lets her get in her head and really does kind of mess with her quite a lot. So the first round, she's just getting thrown around like a rag doll. Zara's just this little human tornado jumping around. By the way, the kid that plays Zara, the woman that plays Zara, is like a 13 times Taekwondo champion. So that's like real life, so you know that she can do all these kicky flippy things. And that's when Robby decides to come down and see her for one of my favourite moments of this episode in particular, but one of my favourite parts of this fight. And that is when Robby comes down on the crutches. He's already kind of out of the game at this point, and he sort of looks at her, and Tori's like, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, I need to be centered, I need to be balanced. You're going to say this, you know, you're going to say that. I can't get near her. Like, she's flippy dippy, like really kind of whining at this point, which is totally fine because she's getting her ass kicked at this point. And all Robby says is, I love you. And that is all Tori needed. She was halfway there getting the act right from Kreese when Kreese came to see her. She was halfway there because all of a sudden Kreese has shown the fact that actually everything he did was for her. It might not have been the best way to do it, but the reasons were always correct. So now she's got the other half where Robby's kind of like, I love you. She's ready to just kind of like turn everything round and kick the living shit out of Zara, which she turns around to do, and then Robby delivers the line of the series. Robby delivers no fucking mercy. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I had goosebumps on the back of my neck. I knew what was coming. Tori was going to go out there and decimate this kid, and decimate Zara she did. wow, like some of the moves she's pulling off here and some of the things that she's doing, she is not letting up. Knockdown after knockdown, puts her to the mat, and then basically knocks a tooth out, which gives her the new nickname, the Tooth Fairy, which is quite funny, but a little bit cheesy. Tori is crowned the female champion of the Saikai Taikai. But of course, that can't be the end, because Kwon died before he got to compete. Cobra Kai lost their male fighter, and that's when we get the Johnny Lawrence moment with Kreese in the hallway. We get two Johnny Lawrence moments with Kreese. One of them is in the car park, which is so amazing, by the way. I can't believe I didn't even mention this before, but we have this moment in the same car park that Kreese like told Johnny he was full of shit, he was terrible, he was an ass, he was worthless, kind of destroyed everything Johnny knew about himself, because that moment in the car park, from the way we see it, is the fact that Mr. Miyagi kind of gets one over on Kreese, so Kreese kind of gets one over on Johnny and the kids. But when you really look at it, that is the moment Johnny's life fell apart. Kreese was a father figure to him, much like Tori. Kreese is a father figure to her too. But unlike Tori, Johnny has never had that moment of Kreese actually giving him the redemption, actually giving him the moment that he needed. So in the car park, we nearly get there, but we don't quite need it just yet. We just need to sow the seeds, because Johnny's head has to be in the game right now for what's coming up. But then when we go to the hallway, Johnny goes out and we get some of William Zabka's most amazing performances to date. It's absolutely incredible. Like, you just want these two guys to hug. I'm a 40-year-old man who's watching a TV show based on a movie from 30 years ago, and I just wanted these two grown men to cuddle. It's all I wanted. It's all I needed. It's all I needed. The two of them really get it out there. Johnny tells him that day in the car park, that night in the car park, you ruined my life. Yes, Daniel LaRusso came to town, took my girl and beat me up in a tournament, but everything after that was your fault. You did all that. You destroyed me, and I've spent all these years trying to get back at someone because of you. That's what this show is all about. It's the full redemption of Johnny Lawrence. He's the main character. He's the hero of this show. So after this, Kreese does kind of make amends with one last thing and basically gives him co-senseiship of the Cobra Kai, which means he's able to Sensei Tori, but it also means he can name a new male competitor. And who do you think that's going to be? Oh yeah, that's right. The OG of the series, the OG first client he ever had, first student he ever had, Miguel, is going to fight for Cobra Kai. Axel should be named the winner, but we're not going to name him the winner because Miguel's back in the fray and he now fights for Cobra Kai. And that is why this series is perfect, because Cobra Kai never dies. As long as Cobra Kai has their students, has their number one guy, number one girl, which is always going to be Tori from the moment she came into the series. Remember, Samantha's Miyagi-Do through and through. Miguel, from the first ever episode, of course, he's going to be the number one student. He's going to be Cobra Kai. He always was. Did he go over to Miyagi-Do for a little bit? Of course he did. So, that takes us to the final of the Saikai Taikai. Miguel versus Axel. And round one, Miguel goes out and absolutely just shows who he is now. He's come full circle from being that little geeky kid that Johnny Lawrence took a little bit of pity on. But it's a hellacious fight. It's an absolutely brilliant fight. We get to see a lot of moves that we haven't seen Miguel do throughout the show. And it's kind of like infused with flashbacks to when Miguel broke his back, when he got kicked over the balcony by Robby. Just him learning how to be a man, how to be Cobra Kai. Because of course you have to remember, Sensei Wolf and Terry Silver are also there. So yeah, they do that thing in the ear again, which is kind of like, he has a weakness. It's his spine. Break it. You know, like, you have to remember, these are kids. These are still teenagers in this show, and Terry Silver and Sensei Wolf are completely fine with kids breaking other kids' spines for the sake of a karate tournament. You have to remember that and not let that, like, leave your brain. And of course, Axel goes over. He's kind of softened up a little bit because of Samantha and everything he's seen so far and the way some of his guys have been treated and everything like that. So he goes out there and he's looking for the moment. Miguel gives him that moment when he turns his back, but he doesn't take it. and that's when Miguel is able to finish him off for good, and that's it. We now have 2 champions. Tori Nickel is the female champion of the Saikai Taikai. Miguel, who is also the male champion of the Saikai Taikai, which means Cobra Kai are the winners of the tournament, only they're not. Because on points, it's equal. And when the points are equal, that means we go to a tiebreaker. And what's the tiebreaker? Senseis. Johnny Lawrence is going to have to take on Sensei Wolf in the final of the Saikai Taikai to discover who is the best dojo ever! And I couldn't have loved that anymore. Is it cheese? Yes. Is it 80s? Yes. But oh my god, it means we get to see Johnny in that moment, the title stolen from him illegally. He was cheated out of the All Valley Championship by Daniel, and it means that here on the All Valley stage, because we're back at that school, we're back in that gymnasium, we're gonna do it now with the red mats, and it means it's a do-over basically. But he does have to take on Sensei Wolf, who's about 20 years younger than him, much fitter than him, and yeah, a lot more badass, because Lewis Tan, mark my words, is an absolute badass. And who's going to train Johnny for this final fight? That's right, Daniel LaRusso. That's right, we've got Daniel LaRusso in a Cobra Kai gi, by the way, and chosen in a Cobra Kai gi, and Daniel kind of suits it. I won't lie, he does kind of suit it. He is going to help train Johnny Lawrence for this final fight. They're going to do a Rocky montage because everybody has always said, and yes, the comparisons are there. In this, they really lead into it, like the training montage on the beaches together, falling into the sea, cuddling each other, laughing. Daniel teaches them how to do the crane. Remember that, it's coming back. And then we get all that kind of awesome stuff, running up the street with all the kids following them, everything like that. Just full on Rocky montage. We're the best. Yep, we get that song, we get all of it, and I was absolutely 100% there for it. But before we get to the final, we have to have some shenanigans from Terry Silver. And with that, we get a lovely little moment with Terry Silver and Daniel LaRusso, where Terry Silver's kind of saying to Daniel, like, you know what, if Cobra Kai wins, you're still a loser, because Cobra Kai won, you didn't win, you're a loser. I don't really get Terry Silver when he's saying this, because Daniel's kind of won completely outright now, but he's just trying to downplay Miyagi-Do and say that Miyagi-Do's a little bit shit. And basically, Daniel LaRusso comes back with the greatest comeback ever when he says, haven't you heard? Cobra Kai never dies. And that is like Daniel's big moment of this like final 5 episodes. I did love that. And then Terry decides that, you know what? I'm going to send my boy out to basically kidnap Johnny's newborn child and wife and threaten their lives, because that's the kind of shenanigans I do. And then when his lackey goes to leave the boat, he gets thrown back down the stairs, because guess what? Kreese is here in the final moment of his redemption arc. Basically, the two of them get into a little bit of a fight. There's gasoline poured on the boat, and then he throws his cigar onto the gasoline and it blows the boat up, and it's a pretty epic explosion, which is kind of foreshadowed a little while back. Remember, like, Chosen said to him something about, oh, I'm really scared, you're gonna die in an explosion, boom, something like that. Like, I remembered him saying it, and it kind of foreshadowed it, so that's cool. But yeah, so Terry Silver and Kreese are effectively completely dead, so let's do a little bout of silence for Kreese and Silver. 2 characters that absolutely were worth coming back from the original movies, absolutely played their parts blindingly. I loved both these actors in these roles. I loved seeing these characters back on the screen. Of course, there is apparently deleted scenes that were filmed but never used. They show that maybe Kreese is still alive or maybe Silver's still alive. I don't know which one it is. I personally am not into that. Just leave it where it is. I like the way those stories ended. So we get to the Saikai Taikai, and it's Johnny Lawrence versus Sensei Wolf, and it is pretty much an even affair, but they change it from being rounds to the first to 3 points. So Wolf does take an early lead, but basically like starts getting himself disqualified on points because he doesn't want to win. He kind of just wants to mess around with Johnny and kind of play with him a little bit, because he thinks he's miles better than anyone else in the whole wide world, and he is miles better than anyone else in the whole wide world. It's Lewis Tan, Cole from bloody Mortal Kombat. I loved Mortal Kombat, by the way. I don't agree with anybody who criticizes that movie. It's a fun-ass movie with fun-ass fights. and Louis Tan. Yes, Cole is a made-up character for the movie, but I totally got on board with him, and I love him in this as well. He's a shitbag in this. It really does come down to Johnny kind of losing a little bit of his confidence and not really thinking he can do it because Sensei Wolf has kind of put that into his head. In the same way that Cobra Kai went to Daniel LaRusso in the locker room at the start of the tournament in the first movie and they kind of threaten him a little bit, that is the same thing that Sensei Wolf does to Johnny here. It's kind of cool to see that juxtaposed, but again, that's just another thing that this show does fantastically well. They're kind of going point for point for point for point, and then Daniel does like a timeout, which I didn't know was a thing in tournaments like this, but apparently you can do it twice, by the way. So he does like the fear does not exist, mercy does not exist, pain does not exist. He does that to Johnny, and Johnny's just like badass, and he goes in there and gets the win, but it becomes one of those moments where it's like kind of a full circle thing because he's always been the aggressor when it comes to these tournaments. When he comes to that last final point, he realizes that he lost to Daniel because he rushed in. Fools rush in. Daniel was able to get the crane kick, an illegal move by the way. Daniel was able to get the crane kick in on him because he rushed in. So you have this moment where I genuinely thought Johnny Lawrence was going to do a crane kick to Sensei Wolf. I wouldn't have hated it, but I also would not have loved it. I really didn't want to see that. So he sees Sensei Wolf like gearing up to do this big, fantastical, awesome move. Wolf comes in, he steps back. Wolf comes in again, he steps back. He's sort of taken the defensive route. He's going to counteract what Wolf does. Not what Johnny Lawrence always does, not what Cobra Kai really is. And that's when he gets that final point, because Wolf goes in, and he's counter move. In amongst those counter moves, he does a spinning back fist, which we know is Johnny's favourite thing. He does a spinning back fist and knocks Wolf on his ass to get that third point. Yes, Cobra Kai wins the Saikai Taikai with a counter move. I mean, isn't that just poetic justice? Isn't that just awesome? Isn't that just bringing everything round full circle from the TV show to the movie to these characters? Isn't that brilliant? I loved it. And we get a moment where Sensei Wolf does give him a bow, he gives him some respect, and then we get another awesome callback when Daniel LaRusso comes running in with the trophy, or gets the trophy, and he says to Johnny Lawrence, "You're alright, Lawrence," which is exactly what Johnny Lawrence said to Daniel LaRusso in the first movie. It's genuinely one of my favourite things about this show, that they are able to pay off so many things that they've set up throughout the years in 5 short episodes. They pay it all off, bring it full circle, and even pay off the movies as well. It was a great ending. It was a brilliant ending. We get some like tying up moments where we see the kids kind of going off. Samantha's going to Okinawa, and it turns out Miguel's going to go with her. There are talks that there might be a spin-off of the Sam and Miguel in Okinawa. I'm not really all that fussed about that. If you want to do it, but I'll probably just watch a couple of episodes to see how it goes. I don't think we need to do it. Robby and Tori are now like, they've got sponsorship deals and like the new faces of karate, which they absolutely should be, so that's good as well. I like that. Chosen goes over to Kim Da-yoon and kind of makes amends with her and kind of becomes a little, freaky deaky relationship over there. So that could be cool going forward. I'm happy about that. The Binary Bros, Hawk and Demetri, are going off to Caltech together. One of them did get into MIT, but then he decided, I think it was Demetri got into MIT because Hawk decided he wasn't going to go to MIT, but now he's got himself into Caltech, which has got like an amazing robotics program apparently. So then Demetri's like, well, I'm going to come with you. Let's both go to Caltech. So that's cool. The Binary Bros are back together. We love seeing that. Johnny Lawrence restarts Cobra Kai and has got all new students and everything like that. So that's all gravy. Daniel LaRusso's back to the auto trader, but that's all gravy. But now when it comes to Cobra Kai, when you train in Cobra Kai, you also train in Miyagi-Do. So you spend time with both of these senseis, which I think is just perfect. It's a great way to wrap out the show. There's not really much else to say about the last episode apart from the final scene, of course, which is the two guys sat in a cafe. Now, before we get there, we do have a moment which is, I believe, the creators of the show Hurwitz and Held are sat at the bar and they're talking about like a reboot of what it sounds like Back to the Future. They name drop some of the actors like Leah Thompson. Do I want that? I don't know, but if anybody could do it, it would be them. It would absolutely be them. You could do it. I'm just saying maybe you don't have to. You know, sometimes you can sit this one out, as Mr. Miyagi says. And then we get a moment of Daniel sat at the table with Johnny Lawrence, and they're kind of like talking about how far they've come since the first episode and how much their lives have changed and how they're probably going to be best friends for the rest of their days. And then Johnny decides he needs to go to the toilet, and then there's a fly flying around. So obviously you remember the chopstick moment, and Daniel like remembers Mr. Miyagi talking about the chopstick, beginner luck, and then he goes to do it, but Johnny comes in and like just swats it with his hands and kind of goes, "No mercy." With that, I'm not going to do like a rating or anything like that for the show. I will just say that this show, Cobra Kai, from series 1 right the way through, yes, it had some down moments for me, some down series for me, but from the very first episode, this show has been ultimately exactly what I would have wanted from a show that like this. And it was a show that I wasn't too sure I wanted or needed, but we got it and I loved it. I loved all of it. I love the way we've spent time with these characters. I love the way it made me feel in certain episodes. Tori Nichols' storyline actually made me cry at certain moments. I'm 40 years old. I'll absolutely goddamn admit it. I cried in some of the Peyton List's episodes. She is absolutely sensational. I love where we left off with all these characters, and I think all these actors have got fantastic careers ahead of them. You know, Xolo Madureira, I know he already went off and done Blue Beetle, but I can see that kid having an amazing career. Mary Mauser, I can see her having a great career. Tanner Buchanan, he's already doing other movies and other little bits and pieces, and yeah, I can see him doing well. Gianni DeCenzo, you know, what a revelation. Demetri and Hawk, Jacob Bertrand, what a revelation these two actors have become. All these actors are kids that we didn't really know about before. Some of them had done some Disney stuff, but we didn't really know about these actors before this show, and they took a punt on a reboot of a friggin' franchise from the 80s. None of them would have ever seen at that point in time. Maybe they had, I don't know. But you know what? Like, they took a punt on it and it's absolutely paid off in spades. There are talks and rumours of numerous spin-offs and whatnot. I don't think we need them. I think we're fine where we are. I think we can just leave this as it is. I know the movie's coming, the Karate Kid Legacy movie with Daniel LaRusso in it. He's going to team up with Jackie Chan. They're going to bring in a young kid. It's going to be awesome. But for me, this story's done. This Cobra Kai story is done. Johnny Lawrence got his redemption. Like, he got it back. He got a do-over and he got it back, and that's why we love Johnny Lawrence, because he's so headstrong, and now he's got the perfect family. He's got Miguel, the stepson. He's got Robby, his own son, back. He now has a new child. So, and he's got a wife. So yeah, I don't think this missed a beat one little bit. I've probably missed out a ton of things that I could have talked about, but this has gone on for far too long now. I knew this was going to be a long review, so please, I'm hope you've maybe stayed the course. If you haven't, and you've gleaned something from little bits and pieces here and there, happy days. But for me, it's perfection. So yeah, my name's Kevin Halden. This has been Nerdly Out Loud, the official recap of Cobra Kai on the whole. I might talk about it again one day. I might not. I have been thinking about going back and maybe doing a season by season recap, and then we can really dive into it a little bit more. But for now, this has been my season 6 part 3. Go way back to the start and watch it all over again. Watch every single episode. You will absolutely love it. Please do go over to nerdly.co.uk and check out everything we've got over there. We've got amazing reviewers who do amazing stuff over there, so please check out everything that they do over there. Check out the videos down below. I'm going to Romford in a couple of days to do some awesome stuff down there. But for now, please do remember that Cobra Kai never dies, and in the immortal words of Robby Keene, no fucking mercy.